This lecture will focus on professional behaviors and the professional role of a nurse. Your learning outcomes for this lecture are that you can discuss the criteria of a profession and the professionalization of nursing, that you can ascertain the North Carolina Board of Nursing competency standards for licensed nurses, identify the essential aspects of nursing and the scope of practice, discuss professional competence as it relates to the nurse's scope of practice, describe how the nurse demonstrates civility and accountability in the clinical setting, and identify accountability practice measures that prove safe and effective patient-centered care. What I would like for you to do, you can do it now or you can do it after you finish this presentation. I'm not going to be able to play the video as we actually have the voiceover PowerPoint, but I'd like for you to go to this YouTube video and watch this recording of I Am a Nurse. I think it gives a very poignant perspective of what it means to be a nurse, and I think that you all will enjoy it, so I'd encourage you to do that. What do we know about professionals? What do we think professional people, what are their characteristics? What determines that we consider somebody a professional? Those are the kind of things that I want you to think about. So would we consider somebody that is a professional to have a high intellect? I'd say so. Somebody that's accountable for their actions? Definitely. They have a specialized body of knowledge. They are advocates for public service and altruistic activities, so they serve others, and their concern for others often outweighs their concern for themselves. Their public service is valued over financial gain. A professional is someone who has autonomy and independence, follows a code of ethics, is committed to their development of their profession, and demonstrates a professional competency and possession of a legally recognized license. So those are the traits or the characteristics of a professional. Now let's consider those characteristics or traits, and let's think about a nurse. Do we see those same traits in a nurse? Well, most definitely. Nurses have high intellectual level. They have responsibility and an accountability to their patients and their profession. They most definitely have a specialized body of knowledge. They utilize evidence-based practice, and they are constantly involved in public service and in altruistic efforts. One of the founding nurses' names is Florence Nightingale. And Florence Nightingale really raised the bar for nurses when it comes to education. Florence recognized that nursing was more than just the skill. It was more than just giving a bath or providing nutrition. There was more to it than the skill itself. She determined that it also required knowledge and education, but the knowledge and education that nurses were needing to have differed from that of the physician, and Florence Nightingale recognized that. Nurses use knowledge every day, whether it be gathering and interpreting assessment findings or analyzing their patients' conditions. And nurses, they have to assume responsibility. They are responsible for their actions. They can't say, well, the physician wrote this order and that's why I made the mistake. They have to assume responsibility for their actions as well. Now, in our times, nursing is recognized as a science in of itself. It's a specialized body of knowledge, and we know that nurses use scientific evidence in many cases rather than just their intuition or doing something because it's a tradition. We now focus on evidence-based practice, which is the practice of nursing where interventions are based on data from research that demonstrates that those interventions are appropriate and successful. Nurses are known worldwide for their public service and their efforts to help clients adapt. In the history of nursing, we know that nursing existed to restore or maintain an individual's health. In the past, people thought that illness was a result of an evil spirit, or a demon possessed somebody, or it was a result because you weren't able to survive and adapt to your surroundings. And so in order to remedy illness in the past, traditions and practices like praying to gods or sacrificial offerings or rituals were often used as an intervention. Along came a fella named Hippocrates, who focused on harmony, and instead of appeasing to the gods, focused on treating the patient as a whole and focusing on harmony with the natural law. And from such, he created the Hippocratic Oath, which is what we often hear about, the doctor's promise to do no harm. Nursing in and of itself grew as a result of care that Christian nuns provided to people. And so the art of nursing developed from the actions of these Christian nuns. Nursing is very symbolic in nature. You may have heard of the nursing pin or the nursing cap or the lamp that's traditionally used at nursing graduation ceremonies and pinning ceremonies. Nursing has evolved over the past several centuries. Nursing has outlasted diseases and wars, and we have progressed from a very traditional role of being the physician or the provider servant or second in command to being more advanced, to having a significant role in our patients' outcomes, and being really at the forefront of health and healthcare. The lamp of nursing is a device, of course, we know, that provides a continuous source of light, and so it's a symbol for nursing of goodness and purity and wisdom. Its burning signifies seeking knowledge and learning, and it symbolizes the ideals and selfless devotion of Florence Nightingale. The nursing pin goes back to war times, kind of symbolic of heavy war shields that were used for protection. Nightingale was given an honor during the war times for her efforts during the Crimean War, and she extended that honor to her students by having the symbol of the nursing pin. And so now we know that the pinning ceremony is a tradition that occurs upon graduation, and you all will have your nursing pin one day soon, and it's a sign of legal authority as a licensed professional. The nursing cap, which we've kind of moved away from in recent years, was traditionally used and originated at Bellevue Training School in New York City in the 1800s. And the initial purpose was to keep long hair from getting in the way, but then was viewed as a rank or being off probation, so the nurse had advanced. But we've over time moved away from the cap because once it was considered to protect clients from growth of organisms, we have found that instead it often can cause growth of organisms instead of protecting clients. So it's still got a good rich history, but it's just not used quite as often anymore. For your nursing competencies, I can't stress to you enough, and I can't actively go to this site right now during this voiceover, but you need to familiarize yourself with the North Carolina Board of Nursing website, and you need to look at the second link that I gave you that says Chapter 90 to review what nursing competencies are. When we have our Zoom session, we can talk through these together. There's many competencies, too many for me to just name off the top of my head. So I would like for you to go to these links and look up nursing competencies. We do recognize that nurses function again at a high intellectual level. They're educated, use assessment skills and knowledge, clinical judgment and clinical reasoning, and that they are responsible and accountable for their action, that they are a specialized body of knowledge in and of itself with use of evidence-based practice and altruistic activities. There are standards of nursing practice, and again, that can be found on the ANA website. But generally speaking, as a new graduate, we expect that nurses are able to initiate and adapt to change, can use critical thinking, are able to perform basic level skills, and be able to communicate therapeutically with their patients and professionally with their colleagues. Another resource that you need to go and make an effort to review for yourselves are located on the scope of practice decision tree for the RN and LPN. This is your go-to. This is how you are going to recognize what you, as a registered nurse, how you determine if that's within your scope of practice. This is a critical document that you need to familiarize yourself with. So at the end of lecture, please go and look at this link. The Nursing Practice Act is what defines our scope of nurses, and there are rules and regulations that help to guide our role as a nurse. They exist to protect the public. Our whole goal is to make sure that when you graduate that you are safe to care for patients, that you pose no harm to patients. We have a duty to protect the public by making sure that you receive the education that you need and that you meet the standards to sit for your NCLEX exam and that you pass that NCLEX exam demonstrating that you're competent as a nursing professional. The Board of Nursing also enforces requirements that they set by overseeing each nurse's practice. You have to be registered as a nurse. You have to maintain competency requirements with continuing education requirements. And there are certain guidelines that you have to follow as a professional nurse. Nurses are known to be accountable for their actions or their lack of. We know that the American Nurses Association has a code of ethics which has 9 provisions that focus on practicing with compassion and respect, commitment to the patient, the nurse's authority and accountability, responsibility for nursing practice, owing the same duty to yourself as others, integrity, advancement of profession, and interprofessionalism. And you can visit that site as well and familiarize yourself with the code of ethics. Civility is a topic that's becoming more and more common, not only in nursing in general, but in all aspects of professionals. And generally, civility just means that you know how to act. You have good manners, you're polite, you respect others, you recognize that all human beings are important, and you can practice the golden rule. And we expect that as nursing students here at HCC that you follow the civility policy as well. When we promote civility, we are creating positive environments. We are respecting others, acknowledging that others have feelings, and trying to turn negative attitudes into positive ones. If someone is practicing incivility, of course, that is disrupting that natural positive environment, and it's can be anything from calling somebody a name, to speaking out of turn, to showing disrespect, to having passive-aggressive behavior. And here's another great video for you to watch on nurses eating their young. Please watch the video. Incivility tends to increase when we have periods of stress. And so we do find that incivility can happen a lot during nursing school because it is one of the most stressful times that you will have. But not only in nursing school, but in your profession as a whole. Anytime you're under stress, you're more likely to behave in such a way that would be considered uncivil. So examples of incivility include rudeness, vicious emails, or rejection of your colleagues, anything that would promote a negative sense of well-being. Bullying, of course, occurs every day, both in elementary school and in college, and in the professional workplace as well. And the bully tries to intimidate another person into doing something they don't want to do, and seeks to humiliate others because they feel threatened. Hazing and initiation rites are forms of bullying. Um, it can happen anywhere, and it can be a habitual action that occurs over and over. Bullies tend to have low self-esteem and poor self-image. They want to seek the approval of others, and usually were the result of or had been the target of bullying themselves at some point in their life. Targets are those that bullies tend to victimize, and those are anybody that seems different, anybody that projects an attitude of weakness, or maybe seems timid. Those would be the targets of bullying. We refer to the workplace bullying as lateral violence or peer abuse. And it definitely can develop into a culture of a workplace. We see this a lot with older nurses. I think that since I've been a nurse, it's becoming less prevalent than it was when I first became a nurse, because some of those older nurses are retiring. But you used to always hear about nurses eating their young. They feel like they've earned their spot. Now it's your turn to go through the ranks and pay your dues. Why does all this matter other than people's feelings getting hurt? Why are we even spending time in a lecture talking about this? It's because when incivility occurs, it jeopardizes our patient safety. We know that there are more medical and nursing errors that occur. It lowers the quality of care, makes the workplace a toxic environment, and it causes staff to quit, and there be high turnover, which again risks our patient safety. So to address bullying, we need to recognize it and face it head on. We need to go ahead and nip it in the bud. We need to include stress reduction techniques throughout our curriculum and throughout orientation. We need to recognize our employees who are contributing and creating a positive environment. And we need good, strong preceptor and mentoring programs for our new student nurses and for our nurses as a whole. Other solutions would be to have things like a civility policy, have awareness training, have rewards for civil behavior, have codes of conduct, be an example, and establish a culture that emphasizes trust and respect. So while this lecture was short, I do want you to take that time to go and look at the video links to be able to discuss those when we meet via Zoom, so that we can have a further discussion about professionalism and about expectations of the professional nurse.